welcome to Relationship Reflections Podcast, Season 3, baby. I am Lexirosa. Today's episode is going to be unique in a sense of I've obviously kind of been offline for a little bit for the podcast. So for those of you who've been a part, you've seen Season 1, Season 2, and then now we're starting Season 3. But for those of you that are new to the podcast, this is a really good time to tune into Relationship Reflections, and you can go back. But today I want to talk about how this podcast began, how Relationship Reflections began, but then also some things that happened last year that really led to not only a shift in me as a creative, but a shift in how I plan on continuing on this next chapter, season of life. And so I've always been pretty public about what's happening in my world. And so I wanted to do an episode where you all could be updated and I can continue letting you into my world, because as I evolve, obviously the content we create is going to evolve. So let's start off with the background on Relationship Reflections podcast. If you're watching, instead of only listening to audio, I'm peeking at my phone a little bit for my notes so I don't get off track. And then Craig is in the room. Y'all know who Craig is. So Relationship Reflections podcast, how did this podcast begin? It actually began a few years ago. I was going through a breakup and I started reflecting on things I learned from that relationship. So that was Season 1. But Season 2, I not only wanted to reflect, I really wanted to learn what does it take to be in a successful relationship. So I interviewed couples, I asked some questions, and then we had some fun kind of one-off episodes just relating to relationships. But this season, Season 3, the way I have evolved, I really have seen that healthy relationships come from a healthy relationship with yourself. But part of being healthy within oneself, sometimes there's catalytic things that happen that lead to you self-reflecting or being put in, like, I'm going to say I had dramatic situations or changes that propelled me to take larger risk and career shifts, which led to a difference in who I am. So that's a little deep, but that's what I'm going to talk about, is that the most important relationship I've learned is not only, yes, with God, but like with yourself. And there is a total scripture, I'm going to go there because that's who I am, Matthew 22, that talks about how, like, love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And then second is to love your neighbor as yourself. And the thing I've seen is that in order to like love other people well, you have to love yourself well, right? Like there's a step I feel like we miss sometimes. And so that's kind of where this season is changing a little bit. I want to interview people, hear a little bit about who they are and some life-changing experiences they have had that have impacted who they are as a being and how they relate to the world. So to start us off with Season 3, I'm going to talk about a few things that happened last year. So during the season, that have really shifted the way I'm navigating through this next chapter. And no, I'm not married. I haven't gotten to date somebody and get married. So for the Relationship Reflections podcast, no, y'all, that's not what I'm about to talk about. I actually got into a car accident, and that's what I want to talk about. Before we started recording, Craig was like, which one? Just to make this less serious. But no, there was one accident in particular that kind of shook up my world that I want to open up and talk about. And so the rundown of today, I'm going to talk about a car accident. So that was kind of a life-changing experience, what I learned from it and changes. I genuinely thought that was going to be my last breath on this earth. And then I'm going to talk about, after the fact, some things that I navigated through in regards to traveling across the country. I went to Vietnam. And then how that's influenced where I'm at today and kind of the new projects that I'm working on, and then where I'm at and what I'm up to. So that's the rundown for today. So let's start with the accident. So I had celebrated my 30th birthday. Yes, I am sharing my age. And part of the 30th birthday, I went to Costa Rica and did solo traveling. That was the bomb. There is a podcast episode where I did a poetry piece related to dating, so feel free to scroll through and figure out which episode that is. I don't remember off the top of my head, but Costa Rica was great, and I came back, and so it's April, is my birthday. May is Mother's Day. I was driving to Chicago to go see my mom, and I was on the highway and all of a suddenly this one car just stopped. Now I didn't know that, right? But a car stopped. But all of a sudden there's multiple cars that are stopping, including the car in front of me. So I slammed on my brakes. I'm in my white Nissan. It's a car, Nissan Altima. I slam on my brakes. I don't hit the car in front of me. So I'm like, there's an exhale, like, thank God. Like I almost got into an accident. Now it's 4 lanes on the highway and 1 off ramp. And I am like 2 lanes away from the off ramp, right? So I'm right in the middle. We're right in the middle of the highway. So I slam on my brakes, but there's obviously cars in each lane. And all of a sudden, I get rear-ended. Boom. And I look in my rearview mirror and I'm like, but then I get rear-ended again. Boom. And you feel the impact in your car, like boom, boom. And I'm staring in my rearview mirror, and so many things, if you've ever been in a car accident before, so your thoughts move so quickly. So I was in my car, and the first one, you're like, oh my goodness. But when the second one hits, you're like, oh my goodness, I think I'm going to die here. And that sounds dramatic, but I'm in a pile up and I'm getting rear-ended. And there's a thoughts in your mind. I'm like, do I get out of my car? Do I sprint out? But I'm obviously in multiple lane, like I'm in the middle lane. If you get out of your car, I feel like that's even more dangerous, right? And so truthfully, I looked in my rearview mirror and I actually, believe it or not, I thanked God. I said, God, thank you for my 30 years of life. This is it. Now, something I haven't really shared is that I actually have always had this big fear of dying in a car accident. And by the way I drive, you wouldn't believe it. No, but really, like...
Yeah, like, does your life flash before your eyes every time you get in a car accident?
That's a really good question.
Because I have no idea how many you've been in.
I've only been in 3.
All last year?
They were all in the same year. I don't know how my insurance company didn't drop me. But none of them were my fault. Like, granted, right? None of them were my fault.
Right.
But I had a fear of dying in a car accident. The weird thing is I told someone I was on the phone with the night before that was like my biggest fear. So no, my life doesn't flash before my eyes, but in that accident, totally. I actually was like, I'm going to die here, because the impact of those hits were powerful. I mean, we were on the highway. I'm getting slammed at 60, 70 miles per hour. So in my car, this is what's interesting, because later on, you get the police report and you see what kind of model and make each driver has. I was like the car. Everyone else were SUVs. So I think my little car was getting crushed. And I know that because I felt it. I felt that impact. So anyway, I get slammed. I'm like, do I run? Do I leave? I look in the rearview mirror and I say, Lord, I actually let go and I say, God, thank you for my 30 years of life. Like, I made amends with death. And that sounds dramatic, but really, I was like, well, I've done a lot, but this is it. This is how I go. I just traveled alone. I've traveled the world, but this is how I go. And there's swerving. You can hear the screeching of the cars around us. And then all of a sudden, everything stops. There's silence. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm still here. And I get out of my car. I look around and you see this 7-car pileup. We're all... And the woman in the back, her airbags were majorly deployed. I was like, are you okay, ma'am? And I start calling police. I'm like, I don't even know where I'm at. I'm like, I'm staring at the UIC hospital, I think. I don't know what highway this is. They're asking all these questions. I'm like, I don't even know where I'm at. Anyway, police come, medics, they block off the roads. They take us off. But at the time, I'm in shock, and I still go to be with my family. But the aftermath, you were in self-reflection mode, right? And I remember I still had to conquer fears. I still had to drive myself back from Chicago to Michigan. So I had to get a car rental. I had to go back and visit my car that was towed and totaled to get my things out of my trunk, which is totally smashed. You can't even open the trunk. So I'm putting my hand in a smashed trunk to get some of my boots and my clothes and whatever notebooks are in the trunk of my car. I literally had snacks and drinks. So when we were at the accident, drinks as in like bubbly water. Like I'm like, does anybody want Cheetos and Doritos? I'm like that girl at this accident. But yeah, it's pretty dramatic and traumatic. When I came back to Michigan, and when that happens, you have anxiety, but you really don't. I don't think there's a lot of moments in your life where you really reflect on what would life look like without you. Like, I'm obviously somebody who's builds a lot of things and enjoys that. Like, I was hosting open mics in Lansing. I had the podcast. I'm always creating things and having a good time. But what happens if you're gone, right? I had a marketing company too. I was like, okay, if I'm gone, is this marketing company sustainable? I was doing programs in schools with kids. If I'm gone, is there somebody to still continue this program if without me? For the poetry open mics, do I have somebody taking my spot? And I had this like real reassessment of like what's important. Like you can build a lot of things, but really what is a legacy and what stays when we're gone? And so I get back to Michigan. I'm like really processing a lot. And that doesn't even talk about the physical journey. Like I saw a chiropractor. I remember I was doing a podcast episode, like not my recording. I was behind the scenes helping a client of ours. I remember sitting there and the whole room started spinning like vertigo. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, I think I'm going to pass out in the middle of this podcast. This is after the accident. I had only seen the chiropractor once. We did x-rays. So I still really didn't know like what the side effects were going to be after this accident. But I'm literally sitting there and I was like, I think I'm going to pass out. And so I remember waiting for this episode to end. And then when we were done, I stood up and I like told the person next to me on my team, I was like, hey, I think you can do the next episode by yourself. Like, I need to leave. And I started texting somebody to pick me up and drive me because I was like, I don't think I can drive. And luckily the client that we were working with was like, go lay down in my office. Are you okay? And I like shared, I was like, the whole room's spinning. Like, I'm not okay. And later on we found out when I was doing my x-rays that I had injured like this part of my neck, like C something, like C4 or something in my neck. And that was creating like an injury in my spine. And that's true because then I started not being able to feel the left side of my body. Like it would tingle or hurt. There was pain every time I stepped on my foot. Like there was a shooting pain from my neck to my leg. So I started going to the chiropractor for like 8 weeks. I had to go 3 times a week, y'all, which is some major dedication. And so I'm getting my health back, but I'm also, so not only am I recovering physically, like I have been Miss Wonder Woman trying to do whatever I want, whenever I want, physical, to do working out, like limitless. I barely sleep, to my body is hurting. I can't just work out whenever I want. I don't even feel well just working. Like I don't feel like myself, let alone I have anxiety every time I drive. And I have this like, my mind is like, oh my goodness, I'm still alive. I almost died. But the world is still normal and nobody knows. Like no one knows that my mind is like in high alert and in anxiety. And during this time frame, I ended up picking up another therapist or life coach. She's incredible. If you ever need any help, comment below. I'll connect you with her. But she wanted me to like re-navigate through that space. And I realized that I had been living my life, achieving a lot, but still not really knowing what was important to me. And so this was a moment where all of the suppression or like, I'm achieving to be enough was like finally like, am I enough? Like, am I enough? Is my life enough? Even if I achieve nothing else. And so, which leads to like what I want to talk about. I reflected on all the things I had done, and the thing that was the most important to me that brought tears to my eyes, that I was like, if I left this earth, I would be so heartbroken that there wasn't something sustainable, was working with kids in school. I had just launched this program called Brave Space. We were working with students in school, and I was supposed to be at a school that Monday, but I had to cancel because of my accident that weekend, or reschedule it. And I remember the counselor we're working with was like, the students want to know, I said there was an emergency, and they're like, what happened? Is she okay? And so I came back into the school and I was like, hey guys, I just got into an accident, I'm fine. But as I was reflecting, right, I realized, sorry, I feel like I'm not telling the story well. I realized that my marketing people, I could be replaced in a heartbeat. Open mic, yes, they love me, but you could find another host. But the thing that I brought to this earth that really mattered, that was unique, that was so like personal, was being able to work with kids in school and share my overcoming story, and help students that were in a place that battled suicide ideation and self-harming, and they could see a role model of somebody who had also battled that and overcome it, and that there was no way to duplicate that story. Like, God had blessed me with a journey, an overcoming story that could help the next generation, and that could be my legacy. And so I made some shifts. I really went in full throttle to build a nonprofit called Brave Space, where we work with students who battle suicide ideation and self-harming and help give them tools to navigate through their emotions and heal. And we help leaders and the next generation heal emotional, spiritual, and relational wounds. And that is a nonprofit that I just went full throttle in. I was like, okay, like, as I'm getting my physical health back, I am going to cut some of the things I'm doing and really focus in and hone in on like what I feel like my purpose is in life, what matters to me, what makes me, what, when I leave, do I want to still be living that has nothing, that without my presence here, it can still exist. And for me, it was, and I've always said this, that my best fruit grow on other people's trees. Like if you invest in other people, the fruit on their trees will last longer. So my best fruit is on other people's trees. But like this was living that out for real, like being able to share my story and work with kids. So I kind of made a transition. I transitioned a little bit out of the marketing world, a little bit. Like I still consult and work with some clients, but was like, I'm going all in for the nonprofit and for the kids and for the next generation. We started an open mic for 18 and younger, and I try to train up next host. I started making even my open mic a little more sustainable, started wanting to have other people do hosting and create a model that was going to be sustainable and we can duplicate without me being in the leadership role. And I think that just the shift, there was a shift. And so for you leaders out there or content creators, there's something when something is no longer yours, but it's for the world. There's this shift on the inside of you where not only are you able to say no to things that aren't you, but you're able to like, I don't know, just live with a deeper purpose. So that's kind of like this aha awakening moment I had from the accident, which was like, hey, I could do all these things, but I don't want to do all those things. The things that matters the most to me is the next generation, kids that were like me as a kid. I want them to grow up to be everything they're called to be. So that's one transition. During this time frame, I got a video opportunity to go do video work in Vietnam. And if you have ever traveled to another country that's totally different, so Asia is very different than the United States, culturally, food-wise, language, it'll bring out things in you. It was so, so good. But anyway, I was hired to do some work. And I wasn't sure I was gonna be able to go on the trip till I made a full recovery, because literally the chiropractor was like, she cannot go on this trip or carry any video equipment, let alone travel these extensive amount of times till her spine and her back is like okay, or she'll have chronic pain. So I did all the recovery I was supposed to do for 8 weeks, kept that real low key, was just being consistent. And then I ended up getting able to be in recovery enough to go to Vietnam. So I go to Vietnam. But while in Vietnam, so this is like my second kind of life-changing experience that helped lead to where I'm at today, I saw crazy miracles. Like, I was able to visit many different places. I'm trying to be cautious because I want to protect the people I traveled with, and I want to protect the organizations, and I also want to just protect where I went. But one of the places we visited was a drug rehab facility. And I met a gentleman who, first off, from the exterior, like, wow, he's handsome, he has a suit on, he has his wife, he has his kid, like, wow. But he had shared his story about being addicted to heroin and so many other drugs, and showed me a photo of him being so frail and so thin. He didn't even look human. He looked like a skeleton with skin. And he shared how, and by the way, in Vietnam, like, there actually was similar to certain areas where you see a lot of drugs outside in the streets. There were just certain spaces we visited where it's very obvious people are out there doing drugs, and you feel it and you see it, and there's no shame in it, right? There's addiction, just like other places in the world. But he was sharing that he was addicted to so many things. He had lost so many things in his life, his family, like now he was in the hospital and they were like, you're going to die. And that he had legitimately prayed, like, I don't know if you're real, but if you, God, save me, like, I will change my life. Long story short, I'm meeting this gentleman, and now he had multiple drug rehab facilities. He had a family. He looked great, but I got to go to graduations of addicts who, like, had already done 2 years of recovery. So they were graduating from a 2-year program of sobriety. And I have a background of working with some people in active recovery in Michigan in small group settings. And I have so many friends who have incredible stories, and I've been so blessed to walk alongside of them. But to go to another country and see that their statistics, even their success rate, was just so much more higher. Like the people that were going through his program, the success rate was just so high in comparison to the rehab facilities we had here in the States. But then the things I was seeing as I was interacting with people, and like, I feel like there's so many stories I can't even get into, but I had just seen so many crazy stories, and his story really did, like, I'm like, you're alive and living color, and your healing sparked all these different rehab facilities. He said to the point that police officers, when they were arresting people, they would drop them off at this facility. Different facilities he had. But it just made me think about what's important in this world, right? And I was so inspired by this one gentleman's story, and there's so many other stories because there's so many people I traveled with. But his story that I feel safe enough to share, right, for his safety. But his story, I was just like, what it looks like to be influential is different than maybe what I thought. So influence isn't just like being popular and being well known and famous, like having so many viewers and followers. Being influential is literally, he's changing 10 men's lives at a time, men and women's, children. I asked what was the youngest person had been in his drug rehab facility. He said 7 years old, already addicted to things, right? Because of the way that that child was born, the lifestyle that child was born into. So being able to see that this man was changing tens, hundreds of people's lives, that's impact. That's influence. That's a legacy. That's the fruit of your life growing other people's trees. So I came back from Vietnam. First of all, I'm kind of in a culture shock because I had just seen and spent time with people that I was even shocked that I was able to be a videographer with these people who are changing lives, people who were main sponsors for orphanages in different countries, helping people that like other people have forgotten about, helping children that were abandoned, helping those addicted, those that battled addiction. Like, I was meeting so many people that were just changing the lives of others. And so I come back to the States. There's so many delays, and I have to go. I literally have a 9-hour gap between when I land and I'm performing to do poetry at Bless Fest in Lansing on stage with Stephen Malcolm and Kevin Morse. Oh my goodness, you guys are incredible. Some of my favorite Christian hip hop artists, right? So I'm booked to do poetry at this incredible event, And I land, I literally sleep for a few hours. I wake up, I go straight to on stage. And as I'm doing poetry, using my gift, what God has given me, I'm sharing some of the stories from Vietnam. And it's almost like in this moment, I'm realizing like, hey, I've been admiring all these people, but I have influence too. Like my voice, my poetry, as I'm on the stage, and I'm meeting people I super, uber admire. I'm like, but I have influence too. And so I'm telling you this because when I get back to the States, it's like God wasn't done. Like I'm still digesting the seed that was planted from the accident. Like, what's your purpose? What are you here for? What's important? What is influence? What's impact? What's leaving a legacy, right? These are all the questions I'm navigating through. So I'm on this stage, I'm doing this event. But when I leave that night, I just have this awareness of like, I don't want to live my life the same. Like, I can keep doing all these things, but like, what is the mission? What am I leading people to? And like, what's my why? What's my legacy? What's the impact? And so, which leads to where we're at today. I realized that every person is built on purpose with a purpose. And I've always said that, but you really don't know what your purpose is till you start doing it, I think. This is just me. Till you start doing it and you're like, this is it. And so for me, I want everything I have in my hands, so whether that's this podcast, whether it's poetry, every gift inside of me, to help feed hope towards people, to help people lean into a life worth living. So for me, part of my story is that I had battled self-harming when I was a kid and middle school until high school. And then eventually, instead of self-harming, because the truth is I had a lot of emotion I couldn't process, I chose to start writing in a journal. And my poetry, my journal became my safe space or my brave space. I was able to be brave and my real thoughts were on there. And that portion of my story has never left. Choosing life and healthily expressing myself has never left. But I didn't realize it was such an important tool till I started thinking about how that's the gift or that I can give to others when they feel like life isn't worth living. And so my goal now as I create content is to help people feel inspired to keep living and to help people feel inspired to have hope and to keep going when sometimes life, problems, grief, experiences lead us to have hopelessness. And the people group I feel called to in terms of the kids in school is the next generation, are the kids that were battling the same things I was battling. But also anybody needs hope at any time. So that is kind of the evolution of the stuff I've been doing. Like relationships with people do matter, right? But I think for a long time I was trying to like date somebody and build this family. But I think for now I'm just like, hey, what do I have in the palm of my hands? How can I influence people? And hopefully as I jog towards the purpose that is for me, somebody else will jog along and boom, we can do it together. So what I'm saying is that a lot of the content I'm doing, a lot of who I'm becoming is being more refined in what impact can I leave to serve others, not what I can get or what kind of partner I want. And I think part of loving others well is knowing why you're here, because you're so filled up. And as you do those things, like, I don't know, you're just different. So I come back from Vietnam. I just shared with you guys this aha moment. I'm realizing, okay, I want to live my life to help deliver hope in whatever facet I have. That's the skill and the gift inside of me. Help people choose life. Let's go for it. Let's go after our dreams. Let's help kids that want to take their lives know that they have a purpose and discover their gifts and move towards that. Then I get this opportunity. I do poetry at an event in Grand Rapids, and the president of a college is like, who are you? What's your name? Have you ever thought about seminary? And I was like, nice to meet you, but no, sir, I haven't thought about seminary. I'm 30 years old. It just so happened I had a lot of connections with this college. I knew the recruiter from another ministry thing in the background. And long story short, I decided to say yes to go to seminary. But the reason I said yes is because I decided that if I was serious about helping the next generation, helping kids, helping youth, helping middle schoolers and high schoolers navigate through their emotions and work through them to be healthy and become their full potential, I needed some more knowledge and foundational things. So I'm currently working on a master's of divinity. So yes, faith, but also a master's of social work. So that social work, I'll have the skill set and understanding and help implement that within our programs for the youth in schools, and have up to date information and readings, and just do the best we can with the information we're learning. So I am doing seminary, Master of Divinity, and a Master of Social Work right now. And a lot of the work that I'm doing is focused on Brave Space. And so if you want to be a part of that, would love for you to give at becamebrave.com. But also, if you know leaders or schools that could utilize having a mental health program in their schools, we want to be a resource for that. So making sure so please contact us. I don't know what else to say, Craig. Let me relook at this.
You never told me any of this. This is weird. I'm hearing it for the first time.
I know.
I remember when you got in your accident and you, of course, because you got out of your car and filmed a bunch of stuff, you were like in news anchor mode almost. You were just...
Totally.
It was like, when I saw it, I was like, I could see it. You were like kind of deflecting in a way. Like she's feeling something, but she slipped into work mode to cover that up and to cope with it. Like, to cope, to say, yeah, I'm Alexis Rosado and I'm reporting on this accident that just happened that I was just a part of, RIP to your vehicle. I like your new car better, but,
love the new car.
RIP to your vehicle, because that was sad.
I know, that was my baby. That's actually a really good point. And I think that's my programming, right? My programming is to, like, if something scares me, startles me, stirs something up in me, is to go in work mode. Right. Don't deal with it, just go in work mode. Yeah. And I think the car accident, I didn't even share that I had a panic attack. I went to the hospital, right? All of these things were bringing things to the surface, but I'm so grateful because I was brave enough to deal with them. And I'm grateful for the life coach and mental health experts I had in my life to help me work through that. It was so much deeper than just, I can pray and I'll be fine. Right. It was like, yo, this shook me up. Like, but you're right. My TV reporter mode, you can't take that out of me. Like, right. Like I documented it, like right away. I documented it, but I also knew for insurance, I needed to film like who hit who, because I knew I stopped. I knew I stopped. I did not hit the car in front of me. Right.
I just thought it was, because I knew something was up, because you like called me the next day. I don't know if you remember this. You called me.
I don't.
And you talked, I mean, you always talk forever, but you talked a little longer than usual. And I was trying to get out the phone and you weren't letting me. I was like, oh, what's going on? So I just sat and let you talk for a little bit. And you were talking about nothing, mundane stuff. Yeah. My parents were bickering and just whatever stuff, little normal family stuff don't mean nothing. But I was like, okay, let me just sit here and listen, because I could tell something was up,
Even now I can like feel myself all sensitive about it.
Right.
But I think it was like really scary, not only being in the car, experiencing like this helplessness, like, shoot, I can't control my environment. I can't control and if this is it, this is it. But it's so complex, because in the midst of feeling helpless, I'll tell you what was so firm, my faith. Mm-hmm. I knew that I knew, and this sounds crazy, but I knew this isn't everybody's story, but my story, I was like, okay, God, then I'm done. I knew I was like, that sounds arrogant to be like, I know I'm going to heaven, but I was like, my faith, like, okay, thank you for it was a thank you for my 30 years. So it went from like fear and helplessness and like, to like, okay, I surrender. Like this moment of like, yo, okay, like, and I'm ready. So after the fact, I had to process with like, was I really ready? Maybe not. There's still so much I want to do.
I think you're too young to be ready.
there's so much I want to do. No, but I am doing too damn much.
Well, you were.
I was, right? At the time, it was like, but I am doing too much. What is actually important? What is the legacy I want to leave? And it's so interesting that the first question, and if anyone's ever had like a life or death experience, I'm curious if they thought the same way. But it was almost like I had to assess who am I impacting and who actually of all the people I'm impacting are my favorite. Not my favorite, but like who does it feel so close to my heart I cry over? And it was the kids. It literally was the kids. Right. But yeah, it's weird. I feel like after that accident, I was living and navigating, but I was kind of in a bubble in the inside of, like, I was disconnected from the world and myself because I was so not willing to face it, just being real, till I had to face it. So
do the timeline for me. You went to, when did you go to Costa Rica before or after?
Yeah, Costa Rica was April, so I'm living my best life. I'm coming back on top of the world.
Right.
My birthday was the 22nd of April.
And that's where they wouldn't let you back in the country.
I couldn't get back in the country for 4 extra days. So I came back, honestly, like very early May.
Right.
And Mother's Day is what, May 14th? So I'd only been in the States again for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So this is my second week of being here, and I get into an accident. And I have this neck injury that seems like, because I'm still trying to work and function, but I know I can't work out, and I feel dizzy, and I have a pounding headache that wouldn't leave. And I knew every time I walked, I wasn't wearing heels, I was wearing gym shoes a lot. Because every time I walked, I could feel the pain down my body. So even though, like, there were so many things not functioning well after that.
Right.
And I still had this goal. I'm supposed to go to Vietnam, and it was August or September. So May, April,
you
May,
were
June,
so
July,
excited
August.
about that.
Yeah, it was like 5 months later.
Right. Well, you made it. You went.
I made it. I went. I'm so glad I did. But honestly, I wouldn't change all of last year. There was so much. I wouldn't change any of it. Because I think on the other side, right? On the other side of adversity, there's a lot of refining. I like who I am more. I think I'm more chill. I think I'm more honest. And I actually think that moment forced me to have a connection with myself, with God, and then I could connect with others on a different level.
It's so weird that you were going through all that when we did our podcast together that so many people watched, and talking about my mental issues, it's a big deal. But it
was a big deal.
I remember, I think about it now. I think back to your demeanor through that whole experience when we did 2 hours. We split it up into 2 episodes. Your demeanor wasn't the normal Lex Flex news talk show person. You were a little more, I don't know, warm, sensitive,
compassionate.
Talking about yourself and talking about me. And now I kind of know where it was coming from because I fully expect, because you're like that with me when we're just talking. But I thought once the camera went on, you'd go into interviewer mode and be stoic.
Professional.
But you weren't, though. With that episode, we got pretty deep. And now I know why. Because, you didn't tell me all this stuff was going on.
That I was processing. I don't think I was fully aware logically, right? Like I was already going through therapy. But, and you know this. So behind the scenes of that episode, by the way, guys, we can put like a little clip so you know where to go, like what episode we're talking about. But when we were filming our discussion, what people don't know is that I was in tears before that.
Right.
I had just gotten through a disagreement with somebody I was dating at the time.
Yeah.
And even looking back, if I'm honest with myself, I think I lived my life being like, I will not settle for anything less than what I want. Like, I'm going after what I really, really want because life's short. I'm going after what I really, really want for a partner because life's short. I'm going after what I really, really want for my career because life's short. I'm going to go after what I really want project-wise because life's short. Like, something in me, the stakes were higher. So I was so much more sensitive. Like,
yeah, we had a bad day, both of us that day. Yeah, right before we started recording, it got. And it wasn't us.
It wasn't us.
You and I were fine.
There was an outside
stuff going on.
But I was like crying, wiping out my makeup, and I was like, "All right, let's just record."
Yeah, we sucked it up. We did our show, but
You know what? And actually, that was right before Vietnam, but after my car accident.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's cool we get to talk about this because I think it's even weird, like celebrities now or society. It's like we view people's products and the things they're accomplishing greater than who they are as people.
Right.
And what I like and what I've always wanted is for people to know who I am as a person, not just what I do. But that's what I wanted, but I wasn't actually living that way till more recently. Till the poetry project, spiritual warfare. To even this podcast, it's a little bit more real. And then life happens. And so I like that people get to know the personal side, not just the product side. And I hope that encourages other people to be real and vulnerable. I can't create a brave space if I'm not brave, if I'm not vulnerable.
That's the biggest difference because, I met you when you were 25, and now...
Let's see, I moved to Michigan when I was 23.
I met you when you were 25. We've gone through this before. Just accept it. I met you when you were 25.
Are you sure it wasn't 24, though?
I met you when you were 25. We can do it if you want, but I'm
sure
going to win.
24?
I'm going to win. So we met you when I was 25. Sure? 25. You were done with news.
I'm still going to say 24.
You were done with news? You were done with news.
Then I was 25.
I know. But I met you when you were 25, and then I know you now that you're 30, and you are a lot. I mean, you were, a very go-getter type. You were very, inspiring on that level, but you are a lot braver now than you used to be. I could see that a lot of stuff was hidden before, and you would use work to kind of hide behind it, and you just weren't so open. There was a disconnect there between your personal and your professional.
Totally.
But then we did all that poetry stuff, the filmmaking stuff, and I think you even talked about it in our podcast, how the two started to meld together.
True.
And you became to where it was like, okay, now I'm showing more of myself and using the tools that I've developed outside of myself to work together to create a better product, which it does.
True. I think when I would first do things, I was creating things in hopes it would help other people or for other people. But when you create stuff to help yourself and then you share it with the world, I think that poetry project it wasn't about the world. It was me healing in the process.
It was about you in a specific situation.
And healing and navigating through adversity.
Right. Which I think that's the best way to really help people is to do something of your own. First. Talk about your own experience, a way you get through something. You can write a book, you can talk, you can do lectures and all that, but until people know how you did it, they really don't, they're just following you at that point. They can identify with you once they know what process you've gone through personally. It's not that they'll go through the same process as you, but they'll actually get more. I think they'll get more out of it if they know that you're not just a really smart person who knows how to communicate. You actually did it. You actually did it yourself.
True. True.
And that you still are doing it. It doesn't, it never stops. You're always working. Always got to work on yourself. But
true. And that's where I think Brave Space is like, I'm going to call it my life purpose, but really it's like, this is the true thread of my story, is as much as there's been this exterior lens, or like the internal experience has been mental health battles, navigating through identity, am I enough, navigating through these thoughts, would this world be easier without me, all these self-deprivating, is that the word? All these negative self-talks, right?
Right.
And it's so cool though, because it's funny how things work full circle. Working on the poetry piece, using the tools I had in my hands to heal as I was healing and recovering, those are the same tools we're using in school, poetry, writing prompts, to help students process their feelings. So it's like, and that's where the story just gets so good. It's like, I just read something for school yesterday about suffering versus pain. And it said, according to this person, I want to say, nope, I'm not going to guess the reader or author, because then that'll be bad. Yeah. But this person was stating that suffering is re-inflicted pain that keeps getting re-triggered. And pain is having a metabolizing a moment that happened, understanding why, and then getting over it. So the hard piece is, instead of having this constant, did I explain that well? Instead of having this constant suffering, I'm re-triggered, pain, pain, pain. The challenge is to navigate from suffering to believing that I can metabolize this pain. That person didn't mean to do that to me. That system was built years ago. Like some people are for me, whatever it is, right? Metabolizing the suffering to make it a moment in pain, and then going forward, that's the only way we heal. And this article really that I was reading, it was like, I believe that now. Like I found a way to metabolize things that had happened, transition it from suffering to pain to an overcoming story. And there's so many statistics that we don't address this enough. But how come there's people that navigate through pain and suffering, and they become so resilient that there's actually this upswing of just major resilience? Like those people are like super resilient. The last interview we had is a perfect example, right? But like there's an upswing of resilience. How come some people, when challenges and adversity come, they become more resilient and stronger and more empowered, and like it doesn't matter what hurdle comes, they know how to jump hurdles. But there's other people that there's the crossroads and it becomes a downward spiral. And I think for me, I'm so grateful because I had people in my corner. I had tools in my hands that I was using: poetry, writing, therapy, music, open mics, creative outlets, to help me overcome adversity, overcome pain, transition from this, I'm just going to say it, this victim mindset, inferior mindset to suffering, and navigate to, I can digest this, make it pain, and then become an overcomer. And I'm so grateful for the adversity now, because the trials and tribulations built a really resilient woman who knows how to overcome. And now you're right, I get to teach that. Like I get to share that with other people. So it's interesting because in this season, I want to share everything I know, but I'm still processing things and I'm still growing. And so what I can do is continue to invite people into that journey and say, hey guys, if you feel hopeless, my goal is to help you feel hope with the tools I have. And if you have more tools, let's add all the tools to the tool belt so we can become resilient and overcomers. And I'm on my goal is that when there's a crossroad, to keep working towards choosing the resilient path, choosing the overcoming path, choosing this super powerful, resilient person that takes adversity with excellent strides and not choose to get knocked down to the point that there's no return. And so that's a little bit about my story this season for the Relationship Reflections podcast because of the evolution I've had. I still encourage you, like if you're new to the podcast, check out season 1 and season 2. If you know somebody's going through a breakup, definitely go through season 1 and season 2 because that will help you, I promise. Check out the poetry project that Craig and I built, Spiritual Warfare, and so many other people. Ray Sean was a part of it. Will was a part. Like there's so many people that were a part of that. But Spiritual Warfare is really helpful. That's a tool. But this upcoming season, I'm really excited about the interviews we have. We have people that are in higher positions of power, from politics to pastoral things to musicians, pastoral leaders. But all of these people have stories of them overcoming things, or how do they get into the positions that they're in. And my hope is that this season you feel inspired, and that if you feel like, okay, life's kind of rough right now, I need some hope, I need some I'm kind of in a trial. My hope is that there's pieces of this content inspire you enough to overcome the hurdle. And I want you to know it's possible because it's possible for me. And sometimes those hurdles are there so that you can discover something greater about yourself. My car accident was a really odd hurdle because it shook me up physically, which is something I couldn't control, shook me up emotionally and spiritually. But I'm so grateful because on the other side was a girl who was finally asking questions she wasn't willing to ask. She was too afraid to ask. And then as life, as God helped me navigate through the world, those answers started happening. Kind of like, what's my purpose? What's my call? And I'm super grateful to have discovered that parts of my story are to help other people be resilient and be empowered and overcome. And so that's the evolution of the Relationship Reflections podcast. That's what season 3 is going to be about, is just sharing people's stories and how they relate with themselves and with the world and with others. And my hope is that you will continue to tune in as things have changed, and that you'll be a part. Ask questions. You can be a part by doing things with Brave Space. You can be a part as being a giver if you want to give financially. And when we release content, I already have a book, The Mountain Climber, but as we release other videos or poetry or books, my hope is that you would just be a part of this family with us as we build a movement, a culture to help people get unstuck and be free and empowered. And so that's what I got for you. Craig, is there any questions you have? Anything I didn't say to help us close out?
No, you've talked long enough. It's time to end it now.
And on that note, Toodles, we love you. I love you. Craig will think about it, but one day we'll make him a believer. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace out.